Music only has 9 notes. Okay, not really, but today it does. Today we're going to be talking about 9 equal divisions of the octave, or 9-edo. And I'm doing this on a 12-note per octave keyboard using the built-in tuning settings on Logic Pro X. This is the smallest equal division of the octave, where you can have distinct major and minor triads and scales. But I think you'll notice the major scales give off this kind of ominous feeling that you don't really have with most major scales. It has its own distinct tuning of a scale called the anti-diatonic scale, which I'll get to more later in the video. But the anti-diatonic scale is also called Mavila because it originated from a similar scale played on a very special mallet instrument called timbres in the village of Mavila, Mozambique. 9-edo also has a 5-note scale that does a fairly convincing approximation of the Indonesian Pologic scale, the way that it's tuned in West Java. You can call this one a Pologic scale. So now let's go to Logic. Pick a mallet instrument like the rotary vibraphone for now, and then just go to Tunings, make sure it's set to User, copy these numbers, and you're good to go. So I'm going to start by going over the basic scales of this tuning in more detail. First chromatic, 9 notes, then anti-diatonic, 7 notes, and then finally the Pologic scale, which is 5 notes. So pentatonic. Since we're doing a 9-note per octave tuning on a 12-note keyboard, we're just going to completely forget about 3 of the notes on the keyboard. For my layout, it's going to be D, F sharp, and B flat, which is an augmented triad, so that should be fairly easy to remember. Here's the chromatic scale. So with this chromatic scale, all of the notes are a third of the semitone wider than your 12-tone chromatic scale. So the semitones are going to sound a bit less tight, but I'd say it still sounds like a chromatic scale, but also like some kind of weird bebop or blues scale or something. Then if you take out just 2 notes, E and B, you've got your Mavila scale, your anti-diatonic scale. It's called anti-diatonic because instead of having 5 tones and 2 semitones like a normal diatonic scale, it has 5 semitones and 2 tones. And the tones are placed where the semitones would go and vice versa. This 9-edo tuning of Mavila has very wide tones as far as Mavila tunings go. In 9-edo Mavila, they're actually enharmonically equivalent to a minor third. So it reminds me a bit of the augmented seconds in some of the scales we use in 12-tone equal temperament, like harmonic minor, double harmonic, Hungarian minor, and so on and so forth. Anyway, for every mode of your diatonic scale, you've got an equivalent anti-diatonic mode. This mode we're in right now is called the anti-aeolian mode because the tone-semitone pattern is the reverse of Ionian. So instead of being tone-tone-semitone, tone-tone-tone-semitone, it's semitone-semitone-tone, semitone-semitone-semitone-tone. All of the other modes are the exact same idea. Just plop on an anti and do the thing. Next, if you take out the notes A and F from your anti-aeolian scale, you've got your Pologic scale. So C, D flat, E flat, G, A flat, C. With this one, it's got the same general shape of the major pentatonic scale you know and love, that step, step, leap pattern, but it ends up being a minor scale. Now you might be wondering how that works exactly. Both scales are built by stacking fifths. So the major pentatonic scale, C, D, E, G, A, in stacked fifths is C, G, D, A, E. The last note E is your major third. The fifths in 9-Edo and other tunings of Mavila and Pologic are extremely flat. And as you stack the fifths, the flatness piles on and on until you get to your major third. And now it's so flat that it's a minor third, or a subminor third for 9-Edo. So like minor, but within a certain area of extra flatness. In these contexts, it functions as a minor third, so I'm calling it a minor third for this video. If you do the fifth mode of this scale, so starting on A flat, it's the same general shape as the minor pentatonic scale, but it's major. Or starting on C, it's C, E, F, G, B, C. Again though, to me this sounds much more ominous than your average major scale, but it still sounds a lot more bright and major than the other scale. So now you can make arrangements just by layering different melodic lines based on either of these scales or any of their modes. And that's pretty cool. But you can also do triads and seventh chords. For triads, you've got your major, minor, diminished, and augmented. You can build triads and seventh chords from the anti-diatonic scale exactly the same way as you would with a 12-Edo diatonic scale, by stacking diatonic thirds. So starting from the root note and skipping every other note in your anti-diatonic scale until you have 3 or 4 notes depending on whether you want a triad or a seventh chord. But the chord types will actually be the reverse of the corresponding diatonic scale. In C-Ionian, you might know the chords go C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, then B diminished. So the pattern is major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, diminished. With anti-aeolian, the pattern is minor, major, major, minor, minor, major, and then augmented. So you can actually build an augmented chord by stacking thirds on the 7th degree of the scale, but you can't actually build a diminished triad by stacking diatonic thirds in this scale no matter what your root is, in the same way that you can't find an augmented triad in the 12-Edo diatonic scale. But interestingly, in 9-Edo, if you play a root, minor third, and perfect fourth, those are the same notes as a diminished triad. Now for every diatonic chord progression, you could say that there's an anti-diatonic equivalent. To make an anti-diatonic equivalent of a diatonic chord progression, just build each chord on the same scale degree as you would in the original chord progression. If you figured out what the original chord progression is, leave a comment down below. You can also just make your own chord progressions without thinking about what it's an equivalent of, and that might be more conductive for you. And it might also make more sense musically, because if you're replacing leading tones with the widest tones in the scale, the leading tendencies are probably going to be very, very different. One really good example of this is the anti-aeolian scale, which starting from C is chromatic minus E and A. Mixolydian you might think of as a light, happy scale that doesn't have any tensions that lead strongly back to the tonic. But 9-Edo anti-Mixolydian is kind of like Hungarian minor with that augmented second sounding interval between the third and the fourth, and Neapolitan minor with that kind of flat second, but with 6 consonant triads. It's got a 5 major or 5 augmented chord, which leads very strongly back to the tonic. So it might be a good choice if you want that kind of harmonic minor, Hungarian minor sort of sounding chord progression. So the last thing we're going to talk about is picking the sounds for your synth so that they agree with the tuning. The 5th to 9-Edo are extremely flat. So if you were to play these chords on an instrument with lots of prominent overtones that line up pretty closely to the harmonic series, like a piano, it might sound pretty dissonant. Now, as you've probably already guessed, I'm a pretty spicy guy, but you might not always want to be super spicy without any other options. So the 2 main types of instrument sounds that work really well for the accompaniment parts are mallet instruments and flutes. I usually go for the mallets more personally. Keep in mind, this is only something you'd worry about for the accompaniment parts. The lead instrument can be any synth or any instrument you want without having to worry about the harmonic clash. So if you want a lit guitar solo or something, you can do it without having to worry about that at all. Another option for avoiding this jarring harmonic effect is to do an arrangement not really based on chords or polyphony, and instead use an arrangement that's based on different variations of a single melodic line, with at least the same resolution points for your melodic phrases. For this, you can use whatever instruments you want for the accompaniment without having to worry about much harmonic clash. In gamelan music, I've read that a lot of the songs do have an Indonesian style polyphony, but they also have a lot of songs where all of the different pitched layers of the song are based on one melodic line at a time. So if you're wanting to emulate that style, or many other styles across the globe, this sort of arrangement might be a good choice for you. Traditionally in gamelan, either way, basically all of the accompaniment is going to be mallets, but a lot of people do stuff based on gamelan using Western instrument sounds like a guitar or a piano, so you could do something like that with this idea. There's a lot more to it than that. This type of arrangement is a very large topic, and we've already covered a lot, so I'm not going to get into that in this particular video, but hopefully at some point I'll do a video, or more likely several videos, where I get right into that. Anyway, that's it for this video. If you have any questions or anything like that, please leave a comment down below. If you like this video, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, share that video with your friends, and all that lovely stuff. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day.